Okay, so this is part one of a measure-by-measure analysis and hopefully some really good practical music theory lessons that I can give you that is based on this Prelude in C major by Bach, and it was written around 1720. Now this was a very important piece for Bach. He wrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it. Which was not really the case with a lot of his music, because a lot of it, I guess, was just free-flowing of ideas, but he wanted to establish this song as a very important introduction to the concept that he was getting ready to do. Now, the WellTempered Clavier is a series of two books that he wrote, or two books of songs that he wrote. There's a prelude and a fugue in each of the keys, major and minor. So there's 24 of them altogether. There's 12 preludes and fugues in the major keys, and there's 12 preludes and fugues in all of the minor keys. And so he started with this one, the prelude in C, C being the easiest of the keys to think about. Now, if you watch some of my other videos, the reason I want to start making some more is that just on the 2 or 3 videos that I've made, I've gotten nearly 400 subscribers. And so that tells me that there's probably a little void of really good, meaty music theory lessons out here on YouTube. So I want to try to make a few and just see how you guys accept them, and hopefully you'll get some good information from them. So if you've watched my other video, the first one I made was about the major and minor scales. And I told you that, for example, the C major scale, C, F, and G, these three-note chords make the scale. Okay, so I'm not going to rehash that, but at least you'll know what C major is. It's basically, in this case, all the white keys. Now, when you look at this song, and you can download it, there's a link below the video here where you can download and print this piece of music out. You'll see very quickly that just a few measures in, there's sharps and flats. And so that's why I want to go through this thing measure by measure to tell you why there are these sharps and flats. And he basically plays every note, all 12 notes, even though the piece is written in C. Now, there's a bunch of concepts here, and I'm not a professional video guy, so I don't have time to sit here and maybe edit these videos out as well as I would like to, and put in a bunch of flashy graphics and that kind of thing. So I'm just winging it here. I've got a handful of notes, a couple of charts that I'm going to show you, and so on. But I am going to go through the song measure by measure. It's a very important piece of music. It's the first song that I assign anybody that takes piano lessons with me. It's the first song that they have to learn, and we go through this measure by measure. And we cover a lot of advanced music theory, even for very beginners. So my point is, please don't get anxious with me if I veer off course a little bit and that kind of thing. I just simply don't have time to make these videos as smoothly as I would like them to be. So anyway, just so you'll know, this WellTempered Clavier refers to a new tuning system that was devised. Now, without getting sidetracked onto a big discussion about that, basically the way that keyboard instruments were tuned back before this was written and the way they're tuned today is night and day different. Okay? This so-called well-tempered tuning system is very close to what we have today, which is called equal temperament tuning system. Okay? And basically that is to say that all of your intervals are the same. So all of those minor thirds sound the same. All of these seconds. All of your minors, all your seconds, all your fourths, all your fifths. Excuse me. All of your fifths sound the same. Now, if you played a keyboard that was tuned to a different tuning system, that would not be the case, and that is very important. But, like I say, I don't want to get sidetracked in a big discussion about piano tuning. So, basically, the gist of what I'm getting at is this new tuning system that came off in the early 1700s allowed composers to write music in all of the keys. You could go from no flats and no sharps, as in the case of C, to C flat, which every note is flat, or C sharp, where every note is sharp, or E major, where 4 of the notes are sharp, A flat, where 4 of the notes are flat, and so on. And you could do all of these modulations and play all these different chords back to back and have them all sound good, versus the way keyboards and things were tuned back in his day, where you could only play songs in simpler keys like C and G and F and B flat, which didn't have very many flats or sharps. So anyways, he wrote this Well-Tempered Clavier. It's 2 books, and there's a prelude and a fugue in each of the 12 major keys and each of the 12 minor keys. So the first one he wrote is this prelude in C. He was very excited about this new tuning system, and he wanted to show off what could be done with it, basically. So the simplest of the keys, of course, is C. No flats, no sharps. Now, if you've downloaded this song, there's a link right below the video here where you can download it. If you download it, you can see, when you look at it, very quickly there's flats and sharps. So my purpose for making this video is to show you, one of the things to show you, that just because a song is in the key of C doesn't mean it can't include all of these black notes as well. And so, like I say, very early on, he introduces this F sharp. And then a little later, I only have this first page printed right at the moment in front of me, but he actually plays all of the black keys as well. So this song is a great student piece because from it we can talk about a lot of different concepts in music theory. The establishment of tonality is one of them. Now, I've made only 3 or 4 videos, and they've been pretty well received on YouTube, and this is why I wanted to try to make some more. My first video was about the major and minor chords and how you can get all of your scales and all of your key signatures just from 3 basic chords, your 1, your 4, and your 5. So those 3 chords contain all of the notes of the various scales. Okay, so, and I'm not going to rehash that. You should just watch that one if you haven't, and if you're struggling with understanding key signatures and major and minor scales and chords and that kind of thing. But at the time this was written, harmony was of the utmost importance. And basically harmony is defined as any 2 notes played at the same time. So this is harmony. This is harmony. This is also harmony. Now you might say, that sounds terrible. Well, there's 2 types of harmony. There's consonance and dissonance. And in those days, consonance was favored. Now, dissonance, you can't have consonance without dissonance. So don't think that dissonance is a bad thing, because it's not. dissonance makes consonance. It's kind of like the yin and the yang. Okay, so what good is yang without yin, or vice versa? So I'm going to show you the consonant intervals and tell you about the dissonant intervals. Now, when we make a chord, well, I talked about those triads on the other video. Like in this case, this is a C major triad. 3 notes of the C major chord. Now, in this chord, I have what we call compound intervals. I've got a major third here, a minor third here, and a fifth here. So we actually have 3 intervals: major third, minor third, and a fifth. Now when I talk about triads, don't think that I'm just saying 3 notes and only 3 notes. We're talking about 3 different notes. So in other words, I can play this C and this E and double it up here and throw in the G and so forth. So I've got 5 or 6 notes here, but essentially I'm playing C, E, and G, and just doubling some of the notes. So what we're talking about is, it doesn't matter how they're arranged for this discussion, but so I can play my, this is a C major chord. These are all C major chords simply because the notes are E, or C, E, and G. That's a C chord. So don't concern yourself with doublings. And that's a doubling. Okay? So the compound interval here is the fifth, the major third, and the minor third. Now it just so happens that we can only go as far as 3 notes and have it still be considered consonant, because when you introduce that 4th note, you've introduced a dissonance. So what are the consonant intervals? The consonant intervals are the unison, which would simply be if I was to play this note and you were to sing this note. Now I can't sing, so I'm not going to demonstrate that, but I think you get the point. Or if you had a guitar and you said play middle C or what have you on the guitar, and I played it too, that would be 2 notes that are sung. Now the next consonant interval is the octave. Okay, so that's the same note, an octave up or down. And then your next consonant interval is your 5th. So you can say the most consonant is unison, after that the octave, after that your 5th, and by virtue of the 5th, we also get the 4th, which I've talked about in the other video. Now the only other intervals are your thirds. Okay? It doesn't matter if it's major or minor. Now your minor third is simply when you skip 2 notes. So I skip these 2 and I play this one. Your major third, I've skipped 3. Now the major third has that brighter sound versus that maybe a little sadder type of sound. So with my compound interval on this triad, I've got a major third and minor third. So the unison, the octave, the 5th, by extension the 4th, and the thirds, and then by extension the 6th. Now the 6th is simply, if we went to the 6th note of the scale, which in this case would be a major 6 from C, which is A. If you look at it a different way, this is a 6th, it's a minor third back. This is a minor 6th, which is a major third back. Okay. Now when I talk about the biggest reason that you must learn your major and minor scales, and like I say, if you're struggling with this concept, I think my video has helped a lot of people. Please watch it. It's kind of long-winded, like all of my videos probably are, but there is some really good information in there. And you must learn your major and minor scales simply so that you know how music is described. I know that this is a minor 6, okay, because from C to A flat, this A flat is part of the minor scale, the C minor scale. Okay, this A is part of the C major scale. It's the 6th note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's the 6th note of the major scale. The 6th note of the minor, the C minor scale, is this A flat. So when we talk about a minor 6 or a major 6, we're simply talking about notes that belong to one of those two scales. So the major scale, the minor scale. Now if you notice, if we look at these thirds, okay, if I said I skipped 3 keys and land on the next one, that's a major third. If I skip 2 keys and land on the next one, that's a minor third. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold. If I take the same distance, go back the other way, okay, if I go back a minor third, I land on the 6th. Just like in the other video how I said if I take this distance of a 5th and go back the other way, I land on the 4th. So when you go this way, you know, you can be going up in thirds and fourths and fifths and so forth, but when you take that same number of keys and flip it back the other way, your intervals get inverted. So a 5th becomes a 4th, a 3rd becomes a 6th. So this minor 3rd back this way is actually the major 6th degree. This major 3rd back this way from the C is actually the minor 6th. So it gets a little confusing, but it's really not that hard of a concept. I'm skipping 3 keys going to the left, and that lands me on the minor 6th. If I skip 2 keys and go, you know, in this direction, I land on the major 6th. So a minor 3rd in this way, to the right, is a minor 3rd. If I go a minor 3rd the other way, I land on the major 6th. And that's simply to say that this 6th note is part of the C major scale. That's why it's the major 6th. The A flat is part of this C minor scale. That's why we call it a minor 6th. So these are the only ones. Now, the unison octave, 5ths and 4ths, 3rds and 6ths. 3rds are the same as 6s. 5ths are essentially the same as 4ths. It's just going back the other way. Okay. Now there is a slight music theory discussion which would have to be made about the 4th being considered completely consonant, but just for now, don't worry about that. These are your only consonant intervals, and you can only go 3 of them before you introduce a dissonance. Now, consonance just simply means that the notes have a pleasing sound together, and it actually does refer to some scientific theory that these octaves, 5ths, and 3rds are close in the overtone series of the harmonic series, and that's the reason they sound good together. But neither here nor there, just take my word for it. Unisons and octaves, 4ths and 5ths, 3rds and 6ths are your only so-called consonant intervals. All of the others are dissonant. And you can hear it. Okay, so if I take a 7th chord, which is basically this chord here, this is the so-called dominant 7th chord when I have a major chord and I add another minor 3rd to it. These are stacks of 3rds. We have a major 3rd, followed by a minor 3rd, followed by another minor 3rd. So minor 3rd, major 3rd. You'll notice what's happened here. I've got this 4-note chord. Well, I've introduced 2 forms of dissonance. I've got a dissonant interval between here and here, I've got a dissonant interval between here. So anytime I add chords, make chords and stack notes on top of each other, I run the risk of introducing some dissonance. Now, like I say, dissonance is a good thing. Don't start thinking that, oh, you can't have dissonance. You want dissonance, but you want it in an established way that is not just random. In the same way with your consonants. If you had a song that was just purely consonant, chances are it would be very boring. So anyways, I'm really jumping around here, and I do apologize for that, but I just hope you'll bear with me and get some good useful information.